going to say, actually, I started in school when I was 4 and 10 months. So that would have been in 48.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a class with children who'd lost their dads in the war. Best friend of mine, her mother's best friend, lost her husband. And there was an awful lot of empathy for those kids, really. There was others that I remember who had fathers that came back but weren't very well, and others that came back and ended up in wheelchairs. I also remember a chap who was probably a lot older than us, but particularly on a Sunday when we went to church, either in the morning or benediction in the afternoon, he used to walk into the church, and he was obviously had some kind of mental health problem, because he used to laugh and giggle and sit with the kids, and you know, and a lot of times one of the teachers that was in charge of us for our morning masses on Sunday would actually come down and escort him out. And I used to think how awful that was, because he wasn't doing any harm, and why shouldn't he be there? And I was only quite young at the time, and it's strange how something like that sticks in your mind. And I found out later that he'd been in a house with his mother and sister when a bomb had actually hit the house, and he'd seen his mother and sister blown up. He was blown away from the scene, and came round and just went to live with a relative, and that's how he ended up. There was no aftercare for people in situations like that. So, yeah, I saw the after effects of the war. I don't remember the war itself, obviously. But and I also was part of the rationing. And it was, you know, my mum had ration coupons, and we didn't have very much in the way of sweets. But Friday was always the day when we could spend the ration books. And my mum had an unmarried sister, Auntie Mary, who used to work in a nursery in town. And on a Friday, she used to get the bus up to our house, and she used to bring her sweet coupons with her.
Right.
She didn't come every
be very
Friday, but I think she was about every other Friday, because I can remember we used to wait for her at the door.
Right.
You know, and help her in, help her off with the coat, and, you know, help her open a handbag.
And then be gone.
Coupons, and that would be it, So, but I suppose it's a good job, because we've all still got our teeth, you see, my generation, because, you know, from that period, because we didn't have sweets to ruin them. And we also grew up with lots of milk in school, made our bones healthy. You know, well, when I say my generation, I mean, my twin and I, my brother, are all quite healthy still. We've all got our own teeth, and there's no problem with osteoporosis or anything like that. We've all got good bones, and
so
I suppose.
Not subject to the modern ailments.
Yeah. Well, we get our MOT regularly, like, but I mean, well, that's what I think anyway. I think it was we had dripping butties, which people would say, ooh, now, but there was actually a lot of goodness in them. We didn't have all the ease in our food, and everything was pure and homegrown, and there wasn't a lot of it, but what there was very healthy. I never had a cold. I can't remember. I was at school for 5 years, never had a day off. You know, what does that tell you?
Yeah. Do you remember being hungry?
No, never.
Because, I mean, I talk to people, I fish, and one of my sort of friends who also passed away, I had a friend called Sammy, and he said, we weren't starving, but you never said no to food. If there was, if somebody offered you a meat pie, you would have snatched it out of their hands. And he would have been quite a bit older than you, so it goes back a bit.
Well, he would have gone right through the war. He'd have gone through when you talk about rationing. We're talking about people standing in queues for a loaf of bread. I wasn't involved in any of that. If we were hungry, it was always bread and jam, bread and butter, or not bread and butter, bread and marge. When I say there wasn't a lot of it, I meant the treats, really, like sweets particularly. I remember when Ronnie and I made our first communion, Auntie Mary came up and they took us into town, her and my mum. We had our photograph taken. And when we came out, Auntie Mary took us into a sweet shop and bought us a quarter of sweets each. And I said, each, Auntie Mary? Because I'd never ever had a quarter of sweets to myself. I'd had 2 ounces of sweets, but never a quarter. Because with having a twin, you see, you always had to share everything.
Mm-hmm.
Our John had an accident one time when he was 10. It was not long before Anthony was born, actually. I think my mum was just got pregnant with him when he had an accident. And it was around Easter and he was in hospital. And a couple of neighbours knocked on the door at different periods, and they each had an Easter egg, and they said to my mum, we've got an Easter egg here for your John. We didn't buy one for Ronnie and Kath because there's 2 of them.
Right.
And that was the first time I realised there was definitely a disadvantage to being a twin.